Good afternoon. Good afternoon, my friends and family here on board the Flower Power Cruise. My name is Jason. I'm your cruise host, and welcome to the very first all-access pass. Do me a favor, huge round of applause. Please welcome our very first guests of the cruise, the Lovin Spoonful.
Thanks, folks.
Now, Joe, we were just talking back there, and I said, how was it for you last night? And you said you're just coming off a bit of a run, so it was...
Yeah, we had played the night before last night, and then drove that night, got some sleep, and then got on the ship. And so it was a little bit of a press march, but that's this is not the first time, you know, that we've had this.
Well, I mean, you've only been a band
now we're home free. Now we get to hang out and listen to the music and hang with you guys. You know,
it's funny because we often try to convince bands to do 2 shows in a night, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't for various reasons. But inevitably, whenever a band does both their shows in a night, the next day they're like, well, this is great.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they were just cruising.
Gonna get yourself a beverage and hang out. Really? And yeah, just relax. Obviously, the fact that we have this many people in the room is a testament not only to your music then, but still your ability and your presence now. And I know I speak on behalf of everybody here. I have no doubt when I say thank you so much for last night. It really was a great show. That was...
Our pleasure, truly.
Do any of you, and anybody can handle this, take this one, you've been performing for a few years. Do you get butterflies still? Is there any level of excitement or nervousness that still comes after all these years hitting in front of a live audience?
Not me. What happens, because I feel kind of at home, and I spend a lot of time learning. I studied method and did 3 Broadway leads, and doing Broadway shows is a lot harder than 90-minute shows. Twice a week you could do a show. Glenda Jackson is doing King Lear, 4 hours, and they're only asking you to do 2 performances one day, but the normal schedule is 1 day off and 8 shows a week, and those days we have to do 2, and when I was in Hair, those songs became hits, so the applause was longer and longer. They became show-stopping songs, and the show went on 3.5 hours, and then you get to the place, you have something to eat, and you know, God, you got to do it again, all over again, as if you never had done it, you know. So this is easy peasy. This is
a cakewalk. What about you, gentlemen? Any nerves getting up there as part of the Lovin Spoonful? Any nerves? Any excitement? What do you feel still performing live?
Well, I said last night in the show that my dad told me when I was real young that if you enjoy what you're doing, it's not going to feel like work. And I tell him, well, Dad, I haven't worked a day of my life. But really, that's what it is. Music, you know, when we were young and starting out, it was generally accepted that by the time you turned 30, you found a real job.
Dead. What do you mean?
And so once Woodstock happened, I think that sort of was a seminal event in turning people into thinking that they could keep music with them as they grew their families and everything. And that filtered down to the musicians who also realized that they could make a lifelong career out of this. And so really it was kind of a copacetic thing that sort of happened as the music grew. And I've had other things to do. I had a recording studio, and that was a real fulfilling event for me, but it was always centered around music. So that's been the driving factor in my life. And it's, like my dad said, if you enjoy what you're doing, and I sure have enjoyed every minute of it.
Oh, that's
my
great.
father said, don't hang out with him. He'll never work a day in his life. Yeah. No, the thing for me is I have dreams where I don't have my auto harp or I'm in the wrong place and I can't get to the gig. Those are my nightmares. I've always had that happen where I can't, it's not being, it's getting there or not being able to get there. That's my recurring thing. You know, so since you asked that.
Absolutely. Well, it's got to be, it's got to be cool. I can only imagine it's cool to go on stage in front on a Flower Power cruise. I mean, this is, you know, for 7 days, everybody here was either there or is madly in love with the music and the time and the era and the style, you know you have an entire house of diehard fans that love what you've done and what you're a part of as a whole. There's got to be also a sense of camaraderie in that and having those kind of fans out there. Yeah, it's very cool.
People have said, and many of the acts say, you know, we're the same as you. You know, we're the same as you. And when we are, I'm not the same as you, because all you put on your pants one leg at a time. I put my pants on 2 chairs and I jump in both legs. No, I'm kidding. Being silly.
That's how you become a rock star, by the way. That's next level stuff, my friends. This is not. It's funny, my dad said to me my whole life, you know, you could be digging ditches. That's what he's always told me about what I do.
Yeah, there's going to show business.
You could be digging ditches.
You could always wash cars if it doesn't work out.
Exactly.
You know, they like the alternative was always the lowest.
It was, and he's
whatever I do, Dad, I won't.
Yeah, he never said. He's like, you know, there's nothing wrong with digging a ditch, but just never forget you could be digging ditches. And so, yeah, amen to that. Take us back a little bit. I know we have a lot of Lovin Spoonful fans out here, but take us back a little bit to how does the band form? Give us the fun synopsis of how this even comes to be.
Well, you know, one of the things that I feel is very important for fans to know, a lot of the tradition nowadays centers around the fact that the music business really exploded with the Beatles. But actually, I'm 75, and I grew up in the 50s. And the Beatles were standing on the shoulders of giants that don't get the credit today that a lot of people don't even realize. And so coming up, my older brother Skip was 6 years my senior, and he had a rock band in 1955 down in St. Augustine, Florida. And the impression I got was this is a cool thing to do, but also, it inspired me, and the music that was happening in the 50s really gave me an idea that, you know, I don't have to be a musical genius to play music. I just have to be able to feel the music and be part of it. And I think the music I was exposed to in the 1950s, Buddy Holly, Buddy Knox, Jerry Lee Lewis, all those, Chuck Berry, I mean, the Everly Brothers, those people,
Cash,
they were just completely inspirational to me. So when the band started to get together, one of the keys for me, and when I first met John and Zolly, we were in a closed music hall down in Greenwich Village, and I had just come back from Europe. I took a motorcycle trip around Europe when I was just turned 21. And when I got back, my brother Skip and Joe said, you ought to go meet these 2 guys. They're looking for a bass player. But when we sat down, we only had 2 guitars and a bass, and right away, our musical instincts were all the same. And it was so easy for us to move into that feeling of like, this is something we can do as a band. And as a band, it really has a lot more power when it's just one person appreciating music. So for me, the Lovin Spoonful came together organically, but it came together with a love of that music from the 50s. And the broad reach that it had, the blues, you know, the early country, the rockabilly, all of that. And a lot of it gets overlooked today in the musical histories that we hear about. So that, for me, was very, very easy to slide into this musical arrangement we have now.
Yeah. And as you are, to use your words, as you're standing on the, I know you said the Beatles were, but all of you were, and to some regard, standing on the shoulders of giants before you, how do you start to develop the folk rock sound? How do you even start to put that together?
Combination of musicians. Zolly and John had been pickers, playing a lot of folk. Steve and I had done that because folk music was becoming popular, and our band did a lot of folk songs, Lemon Tree and House of the Rising Sun, and just things that were folk songs. And so it was the combination of Steve and me having paid our dues, playing so many hit songs. We knew instinctively what people liked because we were people, and also because we refined our skills. And it was just the combination. And then it happened with some other people, but it was because folk music started to take hold. Peter, Paul, and Mary, and suddenly Dylan was there, and suddenly this was a whole genre opening up in a popular manner. It always had a fan base. But Steve is right. I was born when I was in the 50s. I was there when rock and roll first happened. That was it for me. I had no choice after that. I really didn't. I was in a band at 14.
You were a subscriber.
Working, yeah. I had an accordion player, guitar, and I played drums and sang, and played guitar and sang. We had one amp. You know, it was just something you had to do. You know, and what did Jesse James? They say, Jesse, why did you rob banks? And he said, oh, I guess we were driv to it. We were driv to it.
And I was, and for those of you that were here last week, I had a couple of great interviews last week, and we just had some wonderful conversations with some fantastic stars. And one of the conversations was a very honest conversation about the honesty between, there is an unspoken honesty between artists and fans. And it's a very simple honesty in that there are millions of wonderful singers, musicians out there that never made it. There's so many great bands, great singers, great artists that just never made it. Because for whatever reason, they didn't connect with the fans. And it could have been they weren't popular, whatever. There's a million reasons. But there is a true honesty in a group that's been playing and performing and still performing as frequently and is believed in and is loved as much as guys like you are. There's a true honesty in that between the fans and you. They believe in you, obviously. They've attached themselves to you. And a lot of others never made it. What do you attest the longevity of the group to?
I think it boils all down to the songs. You know, the songs have got to be there. And like I said last night, John Sebastian had a magical ability to tie couplets together. And it made the songs, I call it, have a shelf life. And still today I have people tell me, you know something, I wasn't born when you guys were around, but I heard your, whatever song it was, Magic, Summer in the City, I heard it on the radio and it sounded like it came out today. So I think a lot of it has to have quality musicians. I mean, you can't just put four people together and hope that it's going to turn out all right. You've got to have quality. But the songs are the heart of a band. And if the songs are there and the musicians are willing to learn what the songs are saying, I think that's the, for me anyway, that's the key to longevity. And I'm sure we'd like to hear from some of the other guys. This guy here has been in a career in Chicago, one of the top-rated drummers around. I'm sure he has plenty of stories to tell about that because he's worked with everybody that came out of the Chicago scene. And so, you know, I think we all have different stories, but I think the answer to your question is you got to have good songs.
Got to have good songs. The songs are the soundtrack, right? Your memories are built to those songs.
I remember Poor Kenny Rogers. When I say that now, it's just silly.
Poor Kenny Rogers.
Poor Kenny Rogers. The first hit song he had was a ripoff of Johnny Cash. Don't take your guns to town, son. Leave your gun. It was, oh, Ruby, don't take your love to town. It was a guy came back from Vietnam without legs. He had to sing it in his set every night 3 times. It was a terrible song, but it was his only hit. And I thank God that we have songs that are really good, you know.
That poor Kenny Rogers kid.
You have a hit song that's a stinker, and you got to do it for the rest of your life. You know, that's like one of the rings of purgatory, I'm sure.
Imagine if that Kenny Rogers guy would have made it. He'd still have to do that song.
Imagine if he had really, you know, been good at what he did.
Terrible guy. Yes, please, you very silent gentleman at the end. Share some stories. Talk to us here. What's it like being a part of the Lovin Spoonful? What does it mean to you to play in front of fans like this?
Well, to me, it's just a great honor, and it's fantastic. And as Steve mentioned, you know, personally, I've been drumming my whole life, over 50 years, and working professionally since I've been 13 years old. And I've played in over a dozen national and world acclaimed artist groups, but this one for 25 years. And it's funny, you know, we travel together. We've been friends and, you know, and brothers, you know, for all these years. But you sit here in front of an audience like this, and I listen to them talk, and it's like, wow, man, I wish I was in the Lovin Spoonful. That'd be really cool, man. You know,
that band sounds great.
Yeah. Mike is exactly like Jason, Mr. Positive. I remember one time I was complaining. We had this job. It was a hippie fest, and I had to collect cash and go to the post office. The guy would count out the money, and it was just dreadful. And I'm complaining to Mike, and Mike says, "Yeah, you get up, you get in front of a bunch of people, and you play, and they cheer and they clap, and." Man, I wish we were us. I said, okay, Mike, I got it.
And then they pay you for it.
I got it.
Yeah.
No, Mike is fun. Mike said to me, Joe, he said, how can you tell, I'm from New York City. He said, how can you tell someone is from New York City? I said, I don't know, Mike. How can you do? He said, if you smile and you wave, you say, have a nice day. They say, don't tell me what to do. I said, come on, Mike. That's the...
Keep it going, gentlemen. Keep it going down there.
Why are you talking?
Yeah.
You know, I've been with these guys for right about 20 years. And, you know, you're talking about butterflies. And,
Yeah, sure.
you know, I get goosebumps. I got goosebumps when we sit down out here, you know. You know.
It's just because it's cold in here, but otherwise, yeah.
No, I'm not cold. But, you know, every night you walk out on stage, and that's the best part of the night. You know, just like last night when you did that great intro. The place goes nuts, and there we go. Mike kicks it off, and wow.
And here we go.
Yeah, it's what you work your whole life for, you know.
I can tell you something
Right.
as a host, and I mean this intimately, and anyone in here who's ever hosted anything, when you walk on stage, if I have to sell you what is behind me, if I have to sell you on what I'm about to present to you, then it's hard. You know, if I know the Lovin Spoonful is only average, and I'm trying to, all right, we're going to get excited. Come on, everybody. God, I hope they're good tonight. Hope Joe remembers the words, and hope Steve makes it. You know, when you're there as a host, it's a really hard feeling. It's a hard moment. Trust me, I've been there many times. When you're introducing a show that you know is going to rock, you know is going to be good, you know is going to come out and be just a blast, it is a really easy intro. It's a really, really, really easy intro. They are a very easy intro. I can assure you of that. I've also learned a lesson too. The longer the intro the band gives you, the worse the show is. When a band gives you all their accolades, say all of these things for me, please. You're like, oh, you're really trying to prove something out front, aren't you? Remember who we were? So, yeah, you guys are phenomenal.
Isn't Jason, now, we've only had a couple people, I'm telling you, he's in the top 3, and we've been introduced 1,000 times. He's amazing. Can he rave up or what?
You're very kind.
God, damn right.
Very kind.
Damn right. Jason, you got it. You're the man.
This is about you guys, not about me. This is about you guys. Please, Murray, go ahead. Grab that mic from somebody.
Hi, Murray Weinstock here.
Yeah, Murray.
You know,
You're here.
about nerves. I mean, I pace around a little bit before we go out on stage, and I think, well, I do this because I love it. I do this because I love it. And
Reminding yourself.
And then I think about and once we start that, Mike starts the intro with these quarter note triplets, and I think, didn't have to be so nice. An anthem. It's an anthem to love. And as soon as he starts that thing, I think, all right, we're on, we're going. Just like that scene where he's bum bum bum. Who's the boss? Who's the boss? That's what it is for me.
I'm not so bad. I'm not so
not so bad. Who's the boss? Who's the boss? Anyway, I get really excited about it. You know, just we're there.
Yeah.
You know,
when you study method theater, you learn how to handle your nerves before a show. And you practice relaxation. And I created something that belongs to me. It's called the 4 S's. As a matter of fact, I studied yoga. You know, the Integral Yoga Institute does stuff here. Felix Cavallari and we got him the money to get that place in the West Side in the Village. We put it, yeah. And we studied under Swami Satchidananda. So they're here doing yoga. You should try it. But anyway, this thing I do it as preparation for stage work. It's called the 4 S's. I use my finger. It's as if I'm on a beach. I want to relax. Here's the sand. I draw a line, the shoreline. Sand, sea, the horizon, sky, sun. And then I let the sun enter my body, go through the pores, till it fills, the liquid light goes between the atoms, till it's streaming out of my mouth and my eyelids and my nose. And I wiggle my toes in the sand, listen to the water, the occasional seagull protesting my presence. And I sit there, and I'm calm. A relaxation exercise.
That's the single most flower power thing I've ever heard in my life.
I'm a hippie. Really?
That's fantastic.
No, it's serious. Serious as a heart attack in a cab in the middle of Manhattan, New York City.
The best part was everyone in here actually started doing it. I saw a lot of you go. Yeah, there it is. There's that seagull.
Or you could drink half a bottle of rum, whatever.
Yeah, whichever gets you there first. But one of the things I like to do is I like to make sure that our audience has an opportunity to talk to you as well. And to prevent the crazy questions, I ask them to write them down beforehand so we can delicately shift through them as we go. Acting like I don't know some of you. So our audience would like to ask you a few questions. Any of you can answer. Rick, who comes to us from New Hampshire, how many hours a week do you guys still practice? do you? Let me rephrase that. Do you still practice?
I think at this point in our career, you know, we all have separate music projects, and I don't call it practice. I call it writing or working on my music. But we've been playing the same songs for 55 years, and the time we practice is when we have an extraordinary request. Say there's a real short show. That's the most difficult of all to do because you have to compress. We had 9 top 20 hits and 3 or 4 more that weren't top 20 hits, but a lot of people identify them with the Lovin Spoonful. So if we have a request for like a 30-minute show, that's almost impossible because we're going to have to leave something out.
Which baby do you leave behind?
A lot of the audiences expect to hear, one of the songs we don't do because it's actually dynamically difficult is Rain on the Roof. And it was a hit for us. It actually was a top 20 hit, but dynamically it requires practically an acoustic environment to do it correctly because it's really got a terrific vocal arrangement to it. And acoustic guitars. So really, to adjusting to the different considerations that we're asked to do is when we do have to practice it. But I think I could play a 90-minute set in my sleep, quite literally.
If you looked closely last night, matter of fact, you might have seen Steve nod off a time or two. Leslie, who comes to us from Texas, how did Spoonful get so lucky? You're welcome here, boys. How did Spoonful get so lucky to get an awesome drummer like Mike and a guitar player like Phil?
If she's here, round of drinks on me and Phil.
Right there in the back, right there in the back.
Somebody up there liked us.
Yeah.
Somebody up there liked Steve and me. Sent us Phil and Mike and Murray.
Actually, we had a sound, not a sound man, he was our tour manager, Ron Lemon, a great guy, and he's a friend of Mike's. And when Joe came up front to sing the leads and we needed a drummer, Ron suggested this fella. And it only took one listen. It was in I think Milwaukee, and we were at a big concert. It was a big stadium, not a stadium, but it was a concert with not a good acoustic place. But Mike played, and it was just so overwhelmingly copacetic again. It just really fit right in from the very, very first. So there wasn't really a testing period, a tryout period. Mike fit in from the very first day.
Absolutely. Mike not only studied, I'm an amateur drummer. I mean, I got good at playing drums because I sang. I was a good drummer for songs. But Mike played stuff I played, nuances. He nailed every, that takes a lot of talent, playing like someone else and spots and some of the other stuff. I can't even do what he does. I wouldn't even try it. Anyway.
Well, if I could just throw something in preparation for it, was an audition, and they had 6 other guys, that they were trying out too that I had to go up against.
Really?
But yeah, you had one guy that was touring with there was the first reunion of all 4 Monkeys, and that guy was auditioning. But so anyway, I took great care in learning every single note, that everything that Joe played. I got there early. I tuned the drums the way he tuned them. I set them up the same way he tuned them backwards. But yeah, I took great care. And one thing about that was that, like he mentioned, to do that, you have to go so far beyond just writing. I wrote all the charts out. I notated everything that he played. But then you got to play it so much, so that you can internalize it, and it doesn't sound like you're reading a music chart, or it doesn't sound like you're trying to replicate another guy's parts, to make them sound like you're actually doing them naturally. I spent hours and hours and hours, just trying to, memorize that stuff and internalize it, and it was. I'll get choked up here, but it was one of the greatest moments of my life when Steve turned around to me after the second song and said, "You got the gig if you want it."
Well, there's something. I think something is essential to a successful rock band, and Huey Lewis in the News actually nailed it with the song, "The Heart of Rock and Roll is the Beat." And really, you know, these three guys here, none of us are really into standing out doing solos or anything like that, but we play together. And that is exactly what you have to do to have a successful rock band. You've got, I hear his bass drum as though it were part of my DNA. And so when I'm playing and I'm synced in with his bass drum, that alone in itself, and then Phil's rhythm guitar, you know, the most underlooked instrument, or probably not given enough credit, is a rhythm guitar. Rhythm guitar is such an, everybody thinks, oh, the lead guitar player, that's the big deal, or the keyboard player. Or something. But the rhythm guitar player really establishes the musical beat, and then the bass drum and the drums, the bass guitar and the drums solidify the beat. And then the rhythm instruments, of course, the vocals and the lead instruments are very essential, but without that core beat, you're not going to have a long-lasting band or a successful one either. And I think that's pretty accepted.
There are about 17 of these questions that are about John Sebastian. He tours. Is everyone? Do you guys still talk as a friend? What's going on with John Sebastian?
Well, John is very sensitive to loud noise nowadays. He can't tolerate working with a loud ensemble, and his voice has been affected over the years. And I get together with John a couple times a year, and we do a little duo thing where we play bass guitar. And quick note, John Sebastian is the world's best rhythm guitar player. I have never heard anybody that can top him on rhythm guitar. But anyway, he just doesn't want to play in a loud band anymore. And he goes out, and his shows are sensational. He tells stories behind each song, and he presents it in a way that's really, it's an education and an entertainment. So we've asked John a bunch of times to be part of it, but he just gets back to, it's just too loud for me. I just don't want to be out in that environment anymore. But he's doing just great. He's out there on his own and doing fabulous. So
good. The next 5 are all about how did you come up with the name?
Mississippi John Hurt had a song where he used to drink coffee was spiked with a lot of gin, and it would indicate to the bartender that he wanted a refill by turning it upside down when it was empty, and maybe one drop would come out, like the Maxwell House commercial with the singer. And he said, "That's how I love my baby. I love my baby by the Lovin Spoonful." We don't really know what it means. It could mean a lot of different things. It did not mean drugs. It was not drugs. People say, "Oh, that's spoonful. It's a heroin." It's a bullshit. It was never that, ever, not for a second.
All right, good. Two more questions here, and I know we gotta move. On the back of Daydream album, there is a fan letter. Do you know who the fan was? The letter is absolutely hysterical. That's Robin from Illinois asking that.
It was actually my idea. I told Bob Cavallo, why don't we get excerpts? It was excerpts from different people that wrote it and make it a composite letter, and say, have the fans show what the letter, and so they put that on the back. Yeah.
All right, Mike from Kentucky, tell me about your band's recollection of Mama Cass and the band. Tell me about your band's recollection of Mama Cass and the band.
Well, Mama Cass from Baltimore, and Bob Cavallo had a nightclub in Washington, D.C. called The Shell. Bob Cavallo was our manager. And Cass made her way to Washington and was a folk singer. And eventually she teamed up with Zolly, because Zolly came down from the folk scene in Toronto, and they teamed up in Washington with Bob Cavallo, and eventually moved to New York City, to the Greenwich Village scene there, where they hooked up with some of the fellows from Canada and formed the Mugwumps, which went on to be with John Sebastian, Zolyanowski, Cass, and Denny Doherty from the Mamas and Papas. And then when Cavallo said, well, John Sebastian's got to go because he was taking over the show and he wanted to have Cass be the feature. And so that kind of separated them for a while, but eventually they got back into New York City, and Cass actually was she introduced John to Zolly. And at that point, Zolly and John were like that. They knew right away. Lovin Spoonful scene since day one. So
very cool. All right, I know we're running real short on time, but I think this last one's a great question. David from Colorado Springs, what would you like to be remembered for?
The music. This, you know, it's more. As a matter of fact, people know. I hear a lot of songs. I may hear some, and I don't know who. I don't remember the names of the people that did them. It's more important that the music lives than the names of the people that made the music. You know, that's always a vanity. You know, but the music is really important, and that's what we're unique among many of the species. You know, on our planet, we make music. You know, important.
I have a good Cass story.
You have a good Cass story?
Yeah, Cass Elliot. She was a big fan of a band that Bob Cavallo also managed called the Fifth Avenue Band, which I was part of. And at the bitter end, she came down with Graham Nash, and she, you know, we did our set, which was rocking, and she came up and she said, "Hey, we're all going to Chinatown." Now, this is New York City, Lower Manhattan. We're all going to Chinatown. Graham's going to come. I'm going to call Jimmy and Janice, and they're going to come with us. So she had a limousine, and Janice didn't want to have anything to do with it at all. But we went to where Jimi Hendrix lived, and Mama Cass disappeared from the car, the limo, and we're looking at our watch, and John Sebastian is in the back seat with me, and we're waiting for Cass, looking at our watch and saying, and finally she comes out, and Jimmy is there, and it's Mama Cass. The vision of Jimmy walking with Mama Cass is crazy, and so she you know, gets in the car, and Jimmy looks at me, and he only looks at me with one eye. This is Murray. And then he said, "I'm not going to Chinatown. I'm going to Salvation," which was a real hot club that opened up at 11. Right. Anyway.
Cool story.
I lent Jimi Hendrix money to get his guitar out of hock. I had gone to see his shows. We were friends. It happened because we had a couple of hits, and he paid me back. And I don't know, God, that guitar is probably worth, who knows? Maybe it's in that damn museum, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I want to say something. This cruise is better than the one I heard about. I heard about a guy wanted to go on a cruise. He went past the store. He saw a sign. He put his head in the door. He wakes up. He's chained to an oar. And there's a guy beating a drum. Boom, boom, boom. And he's getting whipped and whipped. And as he's leaving the boat, he turns to the guy that's throwing them down the gangplank. And he says, "How much should I tip the whipper?" That's my one cruise joke.
I like it. These guys are fantastic, taking some time out to be with us today. And you're awesome for being here, too. Please help me in thanking the Lovin Spoonful. Thank you so much for being with us, my friends. Come back to the other All Access passes. Have a great day. We'll see you out and about.